In this video, I'm going to show you the plants that I'm looking forward to growing in 2023. Hey everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I started my indoor growing journey about 3 years ago. And most of the plants that you see in my YouTube channel, the large plants that have gone through multiple chop and extends, these are the plants that have been with me from the beginning, or at least from a very early stage on. So most of these plants are between 2 to 3 years old. After 2 or 3 years of growing them, I have made plenty of experiences that I can then share with you. But that has never stopped me from getting more plants. I'm constantly complaining about not having enough space, but trust me, I'm constantly adding plants to the collection. So in 2022, I got a few interesting plants, and I'm really looking forward to what they can grow into in 2023. And that's what this video is really all about. I've done a video on smaller plants on Grow Vertical poles just a couple of weeks ago, but those weren't the only additions to the collection in 2022. So in this video, I really want to show you all of the smaller plants that I got over the last year. And I'm hoping that by the end of this year, we can do a little recap video and look back on these plants. All right, let's start with this one. This is Philodendron Bono. Or at least that's how I pronounce it. It's a plant that has been on my wish list for a long time. Well, wish list in the loosest sense. I don't actually have a list of plants that I would like to add to my collection. Of course, there's lots of plants that I would like to see grow in my environment, but to me, not all plants are worth it. Some plants, I know they might look nice and I like the idea, but I know I won't enjoy the journey of looking after them or trying to make them happy in my environment might be impossible. So the reward might not necessarily justify the effort that needs to go in. Other plants, like this plant over here, were just way too expensive over the last 2 to 3 years. Reason for that is that in Australia, demand can be very limited because we have biosecurity laws, so we can't import plants from overseas. That's probably what most people internationally do. They buy plants quite cheap, or they buy rare plants quite cheap from overseas and import them. Personally, first of all, it's not possible in Australia due to the biosecurity laws, but second of all, I'm also not necessarily a huge fan of that. You don't necessarily know where these plants came from, if they were poached from the wild or if they were actually farmed. And second of all, I just don't necessarily think it makes sense to import a plant from a perfect tropical climate and then put it in your living room somewhere in Scandinavia, for example. Like, you will struggle with that plant. Like, if there is a plant and it's not available in the country that you live, it's probably because this plant is not having a good time living in that country. But each to their own, totally fine if you guys want to import plants from overseas. Just try and make sure that you get a good supplier, and also just be really realistic. These plants are going to go through a massive shock when they arrive at yours. Anyway, totally getting distracted. Where I was going with this whole story is that this is a plant that a year ago I would have never been willing to drop a 4-figure price on this. Now this plant was much more affordable this time around. Okay, let's talk about it. But before I talk about it, disclaimer, first of all, each to their own. You can spend your money on whatever you want to spend it on. So there's absolutely no judgment as to how much anybody spends on any plants. That is totally up to you. Your money, you do with it whatever you want to do. Second of all, please just be considerate that we all live in different countries of this world. If you don't know the cost of living in Australia, if you don't know the wages in Australia, the minimum wage and so on, you cannot look at a dollar figure. You might not even know the currency and the exchange either. But you can't just look at a dollar figure and then say that this was really expensive or not. You need to put it in relation. You need to put it in context. That plant was 150 bucks. Which was very, very cheap if you compare it to what this plant would have costed a couple of years ago. Now, 150 bucks might be a lot of money for a lot of people, depending on where you live. 150 bucks is a lot of money for people in Australia as well. Don't get me wrong. Anyway, I'm personally happy to spend 150 bucks on this plant. That is my decision. And yeah, if you are of a different opinion, then keep it to yourself, honestly. Anyway, so I've got this plant. I just mounted it on a moss pole a couple of weeks ago, and I can already see a few new roots filling out the pot. It needs a decent watering today, but I'm excited to see what this plant can grow into in 2023. It is pushing out its first new leaf over here, and then I'm hoping with the new node it will also start attaching to the moss pole. I know this plant can root quite voraciously, and they will also throw some roots up the moss pole. I'm confident that I can get this plant to size up quite quickly and hopefully have a decent sized specimen by the end of the year. Alrighty, next up we've got Anthuriums Silver. So this is, I think people have also referred to it as like the Spider-Man Monstera. It is not a Monstera. The genus is Anthurium, and this is the first time I have an Anthurium. I got this from Tim from Grow Vertical, including the Grow Vertical pole, and he has filled it with some cocoa chips, and I think there's a bit of bark. It's a bit of mix of everything. So let's see how I go with that. I have no experience with this genus, so it's going to be a bit of a challenge for me to see if I can make this thrive. You know, it might take me a little while longer to establish what it needs, what its best spot should be, what sort of watering frequency it appreciates, what I need to be careful with. So I still have to make a bunch of learnings with this genus. So I could get lucky, but chances are that there's going to be some failure. But that failure is going to help me learn something about this plant. So I'm confident I can keep it alive. I'm just not sure how quickly it can grow, how fast it can size up, and so on, and if it's going to like my environment. So it's a bit of a mystery for me. So I'm excited. Keeps this hobby interesting. Next up, this was a freebie when I bought a couple of plants a few months ago, and there was just like a little unrooted cutting of this in the packet as a little surprise. So thank you. It is, I think, a Pothos Enjoy Snow Queen. I don't know. I think it's an Enjoy. But it has sport variegation. So you can probably not see that on camera right now, but it's basically light green with dark green variegation. Or the other way around, dark green with light green variegation. It's very subtle. The variegation is going to be a little stronger, I believe, when the plant, when the leaves harden off. These are all really new plants. I tried my best to start chopping it from a very early stage. So I believe there's 4 plants in here now. So it might look small right now because there's 4 plants. Each plant has about 2 to 3 leaves. I'm still contemplating whether I'm going to put this on a pole. I think what I've heard is that people have a really hard time getting Enjoy Pothos to actually size up. So I might actually want to have a trial anyway. But it would be interesting to see. Anyway, it's just something that, you know, I wasn't planning on growing, but I was given it and I'm pretty excited about it. So yeah, let's see. I'm actually really excited to see what I'm going to do with this and what this is going to look like in a year's time. Alrighty, next up, I think this is actually the newest edition. I was at Bunnings the other day and I couldn't resist this one. It's a Singonia Mojito, and I'm usually not like the biggest Singonian person. I'm usually not the biggest variegation person either. I much prefer a velvet leaf over a variegated leaf. But I kind of like this. So I thought, you know what, let's give it a try. Again, I don't know if I want to put it on a moss pole or not. I don't necessarily like when Singoniums mature and get the trilobes. I prefer the juvenile, more arrowhead shape. There are 2 plants in here, so it's gonna be quite lush. But I think what I'm gonna do is I'll probably just let it grow and then I keep chopping it, propagate it, put it back in the pot, and essentially just try and create a really lush pot. I have a lot of vertical plants already, so maybe I want to create more lush displays like the oxalis, you know. It's like nice and lush and round, doesn't like fills the space a little bit more horizontally rather than filling it vertically. So we'll see, time will tell. Alright, next up, if you've seen my video where I make little baby anthuriums, these are the seeds that I was cleaning in that video. So those are the ones that we saw me pollinate, pop the berries, clean, and then plant in these little containers. And they have grown into these little seedlings at this stage. We turn it around, you can see that there's some decent roots at the bottom of the containers as well. So what I'm going to do with these, I'm just going to take them as they are and I'll pop them into a large planter together on top of a bit of aeroid mix. And that's it. So I have no desire to separate them. It's going to be way too much work, and I honestly just don't have space to have like 100 potted seedlings of the same kind. So I'm just going to put them all in one pot and let survival of the fittest decide which ones get to live. But yeah, excited to see these because, well, I made the hybrid, so it's like a proud moment. All right, a few more to go. This is Philodendron rugosum. There are 3 seedlings in here. I got them, honestly, as the tiniest little seedlings for my birthday. I'll show you a photo up on, I'll put a photo up on screen. And these have grown so well. I was honestly surprised because they were so tiny when I first got them. The smaller a plant, the higher the chance, or like the higher the risk of it dying. And I popped this in my IKEA cabinet and they have grown so well. They even went through a repot without any sort of signs of stress or anything like that. And I can slowly see the leaves getting a little bit of texture. Now, I do want to pop these on a moss pole soonish. I think they still have a little bit of, they're still really small. They haven't really started climbing at all. So I reckon I can keep them in here for another month or so. But then when I start potting it up, I will definitely put this on a moss pole inspired by AJ's rugosum on a moss pole. It's actually a plant I would have never really purchased myself as well. Again, it was a birthday present from somebody. And it's not necessarily a plant I was really a huge fan of. It was quite popular over here in Australia maybe a year and a half ago. It's selling for a lot of money, like ridiculous money for like not even established plants, like cuttings. And I think sometimes when people put like a huge price tag on a plant and making it like sound really fancy and rare and very desirable and like, oh my God, yeah, I think that kind of turns me off a little bit. I'm like, but no, it's still just a plant. Like if you stop watering it for a couple of weeks, it's just gonna die. Like I just don't understand. To me, it's not justifiable. But then again, I said, do whatever you want with your money. If you want to spend that much money on a plant, again, it's totally up to you. I personally would have not spent the money on it 2 years ago. Nowadays that they become a little bit more affordable, I think I can look at the plant in itself without any bias. You know, I can look at the plant and actually decide, do I want to grow this plant based on the way that it looks, without having to worry, do I need to sell an arm and a leg to afford it, which is just unrealistic. So there were certain plants that I couldn't even really look at because I was like, well, even if I like that plant, I will not consider getting it. So straight away, kind of, they had like a bad reputation, or like, you know, it gave me like a bad vibe. But now that they're becoming more affordable, I start warming up to them. So yay! Let's stay on that affordability train. I am very excited about this little addition. I know it's very tiny and it's getting a bit leggy, but it has like some decent little aerial roots coming out as well. So I might need to pop this on a little grow vertical pole. This is Philodendron El Choco Red, and it's a tissue cultured El Choco that I got from, I think they are based in WA. It has like, I think it looks like it has a few growth points. There's one here and one there, and I think there's a little one over here as well. Of course, whenever plants come out of tissue culture, they're tiny, tiny, tiny at the beginning. I personally don't actually like growing plants from little seeds or seedlings. I much prefer a decent sized stem cutting. From my experience, a decent sized stem cutting is going to mature much faster than growing it from a small little plant. But given that they're all tissue culture, that was how they come. Right? This plant, like maybe 2 years ago, it was basically like not in Australia or unheard of. I think it must have existed in some private collections, but it was honestly like you could not get your hands on this. And then slowly they started becoming available, but not through tissue culture, through, you know, stem propagations and so on. And they were selling at crazy prices. More expensive than even the rugosum and the Bono together and so on. Like ridiculous, right? And I've had so many so many people on the internet asking me, why don't you grow El Choco Red? Like, it seems like something right up your alley. And 100%, it is definitely something right up my alley. But I'm not gonna spend like 3 months worth of rent on a plant that could die anytime. It's still just a plant. That just totally takes the fun out of it for me. Now I got this plant tissue cultured for $100, which I'm willing to pay. If it dies, then it was a bad decision. If it lives and I can propagate it, I can probably make my money back with this with 2-3 cuttings eventually. But it just really depends on if you're willing to take this sort of risk. I'm willing to take that risk for $100. Definitely not willing to take that risk at $1,000. Again, each to their own. Alright, and last one, this is Philodendron Sheza. I like to call her Sheza. Also a newish edition. It's been in my IKEA cabinet for 2 to 3 months now. I'm really just trying to establish a decent root system. It came just as a small cutting and didn't have such a good root system. It is also double-headed, I believe. Yep, there's one growth point here and one growth point here. So yeah, I mean, I think after it unfurled this leaf, it should be okay to start being potted on a moss pole. And then I'm really excited to see how fast this can size up once I put it on a moss pole, because it doesn't look that good right now, but trust me, it will look amazing once it starts climbing. Alrighty, I think I'll wrap it up over here. I want to apologize for talking about money to that extent in this video. You guys know I don't necessarily like to talk about money because it's so not relevant for everybody, or it's so different for everybody, depending on what country you live in and so on. So I don't necessarily like talking about it, but the reason I addressed it in this video is because I wanted to let you know why I decided to get these plants this year. Mainly because these are plants that have finally become affordable for my purposes. Yeah, that's why I decided to get them this year. You know, sometimes it really works out to stay patient and not grab these plants at all cost. Also, that way you have something to look forward to. There are other plants that I have started seeing pop up online at very, very good prices compared to what they used to sell for. But I have purposely decided to not get them because, well, maybe they're going to be even cheaper next year. But also, if I add all of the plants that I want at the same time, then I'm kind of taking the fun out of it for future yarn. I have nothing else to look forward to. So I like to get just a plant here and there, one at a time, and definitely go through periods, specifically during winter, where I might get no new plants at all for a few months. But yeah, when I do see something at a good price and I'm willing to take the risk, then why not? I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you're looking forward to seeing these plants grow up over 2023. I certainly do. Happy New Year to all of you, and I'm looking forward to spending more time with you in 2023. Take care.